0440-7900, Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic.
Sean Hannity today at 1, Glenn Beck tonight at 7. Only on Denver's Talk Station, 630 KHOW. This is the Ross Kaminsky Show. Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's Talk Station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. Happy Friday, everybody. It is 7:06. Thanks for starting your day and ending your week with me. And Shannon, what live stream are we on right now? We're on both YouTube and Facebook Live, so go check us out there. If you go to YouTube and just type in my name, Ross Kaminsky, you should be able to find it. If you see me wearing a nicer shirt than usual, then you will know that you're a shockingly white shirt. Then you will know that you are on the right page. All right, we've got a lot of science in today's show because I am a science geek at heart. I think many of you know I was pre-med for a while before I decided that I didn't quite have the desire to help people, that you really need to be a doctor, but I still love the science. And so our very first scientist of the day, Dr. Sara Waters, is an assistant professor at the Department of Human Development at Washington State University in Vancouver, Washington. So she can go up to Whistler and do great skiing and snowboarding whenever she wants, which is really, really lucky. And she is part of a team that has produced some new research. The title of the paper, Not in Front of the Kids, Effects of Parental Suppression on Socialization Behaviors During Cooperative Parent-Child Interactions. So joining us to explain it in plain English, the doctor herself. Sara, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I've got a 10-year-old and 12-year-old, and of course these questions come up. You know, if you're going to have an argument with your spouse, which fortunately I don't do too much of, but do you do it in front of the kids? Do you intentionally try to move everything away from the kids so they don't see anything? Do you show, even if it's not an argument, do you show other negative emotions in front of your kids, frustrated from work and all that kind of thing? So it sounds like you're taking this on. Can you tell us a little bit about your research and the methodology, which is fascinating too?
Sure. Well, that's exactly right. There's this, parents want to protect their kids from negative emotions. We don't usually want to feel them ourselves, and we certainly want to keep our kids from having to be exposed to them if we can. And I think that's a really noble desire on parents' parts, and I'm certainly not suggesting, like, to really get into a nasty argument right in front of your children or share all your stresses with your kids. That's not the idea. But there's a lot of research that shows that kids are really sensitive to their parents' emotions. And so if you're having a particularly bad day, if you had a difficult conversation with your boss, or you're in conflict with your partner, the thing is, your kids are probably picking up on something. Even if they don't know exactly what's going on, you're trying to keep it from them, they know that something is up because they're so attuned to what's going on with you. And so that's what this work was looking at was, hey, our parents' impulse to kind of put on a good face and deny that they're really feeling bad, actually having some negative consequences for their kids. So in this study, kids were 7 to 11 years old, so right lining up with your family. And we stressed parents out using a lab-based task that kind of makes people do something that almost everybody doesn't like to do, which is public speaking. So the parents had to give a public speaking task that didn't go very well for them while the kids were doing something else. And then we asked half of the parents to not let your child know how you're feeling. They're going to come back in the room, you're going to have a conversation, you're going to play some games. Don't let them know how you're feeling. And what we found was that the parents who were given that instruction to suppress or hide or mask their emotions, not only did those parents look less positive, they had less positive emotion, which we would expect since they were trying to mask what they were feeling. They were less warm, they were less responsive to their child during play, but kids acted the same way back. They had less positive emotion, they were less warm and less responsive, and the whole quality of that parent-child interaction decreased for the pairs where the parent was suppressing.
So let me try to clarify. So you put the parents in a position where they would be coming out of an activity that you structured to stress them out and make them feel not very good, speaking in public and getting a bad reaction from the audience, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. I often describe it as like, it's kind of like a job interview that's not going very well.
Okay.
It's not very long. It's not aggressive. At the same time, you walk out not feeling great.
Okay, so then you tell the parents to mask how they're feeling from the kids. And what I want to try to clarify is, are you telling the parents to mask their negative feelings from the event, or are you telling the parents to mask all feelings? Because it's interesting that you describe the parents who are masking as being less positive and less warm, even though the thing you told them to mask or the proximate event that they're masking was a negative event.
Right. So the thing is that with this stress task that we do, parents, well, people in general, have a strong bodily stress response. Their cortisol, their stress hormone goes up, their fight or flight response comes online. They don't necessarily tell us that they're feeling bad.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be a gender difference too between men and women, of whether they'll report to us, oh, that was really hard, I feel awful, or not. And so what we told them was to just not let your child know what you're feeling, what you've just been through.
Mm-hmm.
And so there could be some masking of positive emotion too. And that's why it's not super surprising that parents looked less warm, less responsive, less positive. What we really were looking to see was whether that transmitted to the child, whether the child was actually picking up on this.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the things that happens, is that when we feel bad and we're trying to put a good face on, it often doesn't work as well as we think it's going to, or it doesn't come through as authentic, right? And so when the parents are just trying to be sort of neutral, they're playing a game with their child, and everything is sort of just fine on the surface, our kids picking up that something's not right here, and what are they doing with that, right? Is it actually changing the way that they relate to their parent?
What do you think the potential long-term consequences are of this? I mean, and do you think it's a very significant thing? I'm reminded of a lot of things we're dealing with in the world these days. I saw a Market Watch piece just yesterday, how overparenting in America has created a generation of snowflakes. And then an entirely different kind of conversation we had a few days ago, actually, with a pediatric allergist about the huge explosion we had in peanut allergies over the previous generation or so, because so many women got afraid of them, or parents mostly women got afraid of them, that either the women didn't eat peanuts or peanut butter while they were pregnant and then kept their kids away from it, and it caused an explosion in peanut allergies. Right? So you see where I'm going. Like, does all of this kind of point to today's parents not really knowing how to parent very well?
Well, I think that so a couple of things. One, we parent the way that we were parented. So we like to talk about, parenting our children, loving our children, it's the most natural thing. And it absolutely is. And that natural reaction comes directly out of your own experience as a kid, how your parents treated you. And that's, there's lots of work that shows that it's this, this intergenerational transmission, if you want to use a big word for it. So one, that's where our understanding of how to parent comes from. Two, the thing about suppressing your emotion or showing your emotion, that's actually really important. It might seem like kind of a passing thing, but children are learning what to do with their own emotions by watching their parents. And so parents who don't express negative emotion or tell their child, put on a good face, big boys don't cry, all these messages around emotion are teaching their children what is okay to express and what is not okay to express, how it's okay to express things. And there's some really good work, we didn't explore it in this study, but there's some really good work showing that, say, gender messages in this country for young children around what to express, that we teach boys to funnel their negative emotion into anger, that it's not okay to be sad if you're a little boy. And we see this in behavior, that girls are more likely to cry, they're more likely to talk about their emotions, and that's because we've taught little girls it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to talk about your feelings. We've taught little boys it's not okay to do those things. And so they're only free to express their emotion in certain ways. And so that's where we start to see very different patterns as they get older and become adolescents and adults and face lots of big life challenges, these very different ways of managing, because we can't protect our kids from all of the hard, difficult, bad things, right? We might wish to, but we really can't. And so what we can do is teach them how to be resilient, is teach them how to manage or regulate their emotions in ways that are going to be healthy and effective, in ways that don't damage us or damage our relationships. And that's what parents can do by not just telling their kids what to do, but even more powerfully by modeling it. When a child sees a parent express their negative emotion, even strong negative emotion, in a healthy way, and sees that parent say, okay, I am so pissed at this guy who just cut me off, on the highway. I want to scream and start swearing at them. I'm not going to. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to remind myself that we're safe and that everything's okay. Kids are learning to be resilient by watching their parents be resilient.
Okay, you said a lot of very interesting things there. So, and by the way, for those of you just joining us, our special guest, Dr. Sara Waters from the Department of Human Development at Washington State University in Vancouver, Washington. So, I absolutely believe the intergenerational things, right? And that's in a lot of places, not just in how you parent, but in how people vote, in what football team you like. There's a lot of ways that you can see your parents' choices and behaviors having long-lasting impact on you. But I also, and I'm very careful to understand that the plural of anecdote is not data, but doesn't it seem, or at least feel, like the current generation of parents really does try to bubble wrap their kids and feel a lot more fear about everything that goes on in the world than my parents did? And you've got, Lenore Skenazy and the whole free range kids movement is a reaction to something that wasn't really around when my parents were raising me.
I do think that there's more fear around that parents feel around their children, and across a lot of different areas in this country right now. There's a lot of fear and anxiety, and some of that may be based in, maybe well-founded, maybe based in reality, and some of it is a product probably of the kinds of information that we have access to, right? When I was growing up, things like, a child kidnapping case or something like that, the things that really haunt parents' nightmares, we didn't have access to that on the local news unless it had happened in our area, right? And the thing is that wasn't very common. And so it wasn't like today where I can very quickly get information about every child abduction across the country all the time, and it feels like a really huge phenomenon.
Right.
So
even though it's not, even though they're more rare than they used to be. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky would have a lot to say about how we feel about this stuff right now.
Absolutely, exactly. And so I think you're right that there is fear, and some of it's based in truth, and some of it's based in the kind of information that we're exposed to now, which is very different from a generation ago or more.
All right, and let me ask you another thing that you brought up, and you can just tell me if this is kind of away from what you've really studied, but you talked about the difference in how boys and girls express emotion, and that boys are taught not to express emotion. And my question for you is, how much data is there about the balance of nature and nurture in boys being less emotionally expressive, right? I mean, I am not a very emotional person. I don't think I ever have been. I don't remember ever being taught that, but I don't think you actually mean it's necessarily explicit teaching, more like modeling perhaps. But could it just be that on average boys are just less emotionally expressive, even regardless of sociological influences on us?
Well, I think ultimately it's an impossible question to answer because human babies can't grow up without adults around and socialization, right? Some really horrific history lessons in other parts of the world have taught us that. You try to raise a baby, in a very non-socializing environment, and they just don't survive. But I think that your point about, okay, I don't remember being taught these things. Does that mean that they were just nature, that they're just part of who I am? I think that really underestimates how much we learn through modeling, through observation, and how much we learn really early in life. So there is research to show that parents, moms and dads, talk about feelings differently to babies, like pre-verbal babies. And I don't mean talking about their own emotions. I mean, look at you, you're so active, you're so excited, you have so much energy, versus, which would be a positive way of describing a baby that's super wiggly, right? Versus, oh, you're really upset, like you need to calm down, you need to be soothed. These kinds of messages start really, really early on. Maybe even, women interpret activity in the womb differently, potentially based on kind of their own ideas about what's supposed to be normal or what they want for their child. And so I think it can be very subtle, and it can feel like, oh, this is just who I've always been.
So you think, and I've only got about a minute left here, do you think that it's a lot more nurture than nature, the difference between boys' emotional expression and girls?
I do. And I think that we have enough research to start piecing this together, that mothers and we know men and women express emotions at different rates, and or not in different ways. I'm not saying men are completely unemotional, just different emotions and in different ways.
All right.
And that happens quite young.
Okay, and the last thing I want to ask you, we got about 45 seconds here. If you were to give parents one piece of advice based on the research that you laid out in your article, Not in Front of the Kids, what would that piece of advice be?
I think that my advice would be to recognize that your children are learning about emotions from you, and so be as mindful as you can be. When you have a strong emotion, positive or negative, it's a learning opportunity for your child to see what you do with that. And those lessons, children are picking them up even when they don't look like they're paying attention to you. They are internalizing these, what can feel like a very subtle message. And so when you dismiss a negative emotion, even though you're really feeling it, you're teaching them to do the same thing later on. When you acknowledge it and then find a constructive way to manage it, not have a meltdown,
I'm sorry, Sara, but we got to leave it there. Sara Waters from Washington State University. Thanks for being here, Sara.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.
This report is sponsored by 23andMe.
Highways and in-town roads look excellent right now. C470 smooth through Highlands Ranch. I-25 is delay-free from Castle Rock up through Thornton. And I-70 looks great up through the high country. Through the city out towards the airport, no problems either. Today we'll see a chance of